Good morning, everyone. It is August 8th. Gonna give an update on what's going on in the Kursk region as we zoom in on it here. The Ukrainians seem to have increased their attacks and have taken more territory. Yesterday, the lines were about here. The Ukrainians have taken about this much territory since then, since yesterday, in the last 24 hours or so, and have increased the ground the Ukrainians hold in Russia to about 350 square kilometers. Now, I'm seeing some numbers be put out on the total numbers of Ukrainian forces and equipment in play here that have crossed over the border, and it's somewhere around 1,000 troops. That's a bit on the low end. I've seen as high as 3 brigades, which could be anywhere between 1,500 to 3,000 troops have been committed to this fight. I'm just saying 1,000 because that is what I've seen as the official geolocated sources saying. Now, with that in mind, I'm not sure what the aim is for the Ukrainians here. Definitely making a political statement to Vladimir Putin on the state of his security apparatus within Russia. Can they actually secure Russians? There have been Russian civilians wounded in this fighting, and that speaks volumes for what Russians will view as Vladimir Putin's ability to lead, given this war was started by him. Now, obviously, the Kremlin is spinning the message saying that this fight has stopped. The Russians have ceased the advances, and there is nothing to worry about. However, many observers on the ground are saying that's not the case. The Ukrainians continue to advance, and as I said, they have taken additional ground and have moved into a few of the villages. However, when it comes to what Ukraine's end state here with this fight is, I'm unsure. There's not really any logistical reason for this fight. There's not really any strategic or tactical advantage to Ukraine pushing in. Are they trying to relieve pressure from other forces or other areas? Perhaps this region over here in Avdiivka that was coming from Donetsk heading towards Pokrovsk. Are they trying to relieve that by having an invasion? Because Russia was ostensibly making gains in this area right here. And if they were able to kind of flank and take this road, it would cut off a large swath of territory and make defending Pokrovsk a little more precarious for the Ukrainians. The difference here is Ukraine has defensive lines, concentric defensive lines, and they are staggered and well built. So they're in a place to commit forces here in a method that would massively attrit Russia's forces. And that is what Ukraine's whole thought process is: attrit Russia, make it untenable to stay in Russia because you're losing so many soldiers and so many pieces of equipment and so much money that it is no longer viable for Russia to continue this war. I don't know that invading Kursk fits that strategy. Now, as I said, it does create political problems for Putin, but he is very, very secure in his position within the Kremlin. So that is somewhat of a non-issue. Yes, there's the potential for an overthrow, but does a small invasion like this into Russia cause that? Absolutely not. In fact, Putin seems to be maintaining the fight down in Donetsk while committing mercenaries to drive the Ukrainians out, as we are now hearing of a unit we haven't heard about in Ukraine for a very long time, and that is Wagner Group. Apparently, Wagner Group is being redeployed from some of its positions in Africa to try and drive the Ukrainians out of these positions. It's going to be very difficult because, as I said before, there's no rail line that runs into this sector. In fact, the major rail lines actually run north of the highway, so it's not like the Ukrainians are cutting anything major off here. One thing is for sure, though, this absolutely caught the Russians off guard, and that's likely because, as I said, there's not a whole lot of tactical reasoning or strategic reasoning for invading this area right here. So I think it definitely is kind of a wake-up call political move. Perhaps the Ukrainians were hoping that it would be a morale booster. It would also be somewhat of a reminder that the Ukrainians are still a venerable fighting force in this region and can strike Russia if they feel like it. But does that mean they should take the eye off the ball of attriting forces down in Donetsk? I think Zelensky and probably his military staff assessed that the Russian effort down in Avdiivka and Donetsk, moving this way towards Pokrovsk, is petering out. Many military experts across NATO have said that Russia is likely 6 to 8 weeks away from this small offensive that they have been undertaking heading towards Pokrovsk is going to culminate. Weather is a part of that. Troop rotations is another part of that. And the fact of the matter is, the deeper Russia gets into this territory, the harder it is for them to maintain logistics lines and not be flanked themselves and be cut off. Same thing, though, can be said about what's going on up in Kursk. The Ukrainians have done a very good job of spreading their line across the border here, meaning that they can continue to be resupplied in a multifaceted, multi-directional way from the interior of Ukraine. But if they get bold and start perhaps pushing down this highway, it leaves them open for a potential Russian flanking maneuver, because Russia eventually will be able to mass forces in this region. They just haven't yet because of the logistical woes I've spoken about. Again, we'll see where this goes, but this is by far the largest incursion and most sustained incursion into Russia that we have seen thus far. Will Ukraine commit additional brigades? Will they somewhat high five, say they've made their point, and fall back to the safety of their borders? Not entirely sure at this point, but we'll keep an eye out.